I think if you have an atmosphere that is delightful and joyful and joins people together, that you create beauty, period.
Hello, and welcome to Art Restart, where we draw inspiration from artists who are reinventing their fields and building a new landscape for the arts. I'm Pier Carlo Talenti, the producer and editor of this podcast, which is brought to you by the Thomas S. Keenan Institute for the Arts at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. In this episode, we'll be hearing from Canadian-American choreographer Aszure Barton. Aszure is the artistic director of Aszure Barton and Artists, which she founded very early in her career as a creative outlet for the collaborative and anti-hierarchical instincts she'd often had to repress in her dance education. 2 decades later, Aszure Barton and Artists, which includes a core staff of creative collaborators, has made work all over the world with a wide array of artists and institutions, including Mikhail Baryshnikov, Nederlands Dance Theater, and Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. Aszure is currently the choreographer in residence at Hubbard Street Dance Chicago, and is also developing a new piece in partnership with trumpeter and composer Ambros Akinmusiri. This past winter, at San Francisco Ballet, Aszure choreographed Mere Mortals, a world premiere that new artistic director Tamara Rojo had commissioned, and with which she chose to close out her inaugural season. Mere Mortals explored the science and ramifications of AI through the ancient myth of Pandora, with a brand new score by world-renowned British electronica composer Sam Shepard, also known as Floating Points, and video and sound design by Barcelona-based Hamill Industries. Mere Mortals was a big, expensive gamble for the ballet. But guess what? It totally paid off. Not only was Mere Mortals a hit with critics, with the San Francisco Chronicle calling it a passionate success, it also proved to be a box office bonanza. So much so that San Francisco Ballet brought the production back to the stage just 3 months later for several encore performances. This does not happen often in ballet, especially with a new work. Perhaps most importantly, many in the audience were first-time ballet-goers, several of whom saw the piece more than once. In this arts climate, when so many dance companies are struggling to get even their regular audiences back in the door, what was it about Mere Mortals that made it such a hit? Well, I thought speaking towards choreographer and getting a sense of how she creates might give us a clue. Aszure spoke to me from her home in Seattle, Washington. I started by asking her about why dismantling traditional dance hierarchies and demarcations was so important to her and her art making.
Well, I have to admit that I work within the hierarchy because I accept jobs, and I'm delighted to be offered jobs by institutions that function in that way.
I will ask you later about possible frictions, but for now,
yes.
for now, about the way you ideally work.
Yes. Well, I think it's important to create an atmosphere. You know, we spend so much time working, and it's a privilege to be able to work at something that you love, but it is work, and it is work, and it is something that you spend a lot of time doing. And so I strongly believe that in creating, or trying to at least creating an atmosphere that you want to live within. And so I try to, and it's mostly successful, there's always friction along the way, try to not have a hierarchy when I'm actually creating the physical language. And that meaning, and even when there's restagings that are happening, meaning that everyone in the space is there learning all of the material and creating the material so that we are all simultaneously creating something together. I prefer this way of working because, for many reasons, but it's amazing. I mean, recently when I worked with San Francisco Ballet, it was really beautiful to watch people move through uncomfortable moments and come out the other side and be helping and teaching and working in such a democratic way. It was really beautiful. And so,
can you give me an example, for instance, of how in a different setting, a dancer might deal with that uncomfortable moment differently? than in the room in San Francisco?
What do you mean in a different setting?
Well, if you're saying that in the San Francisco Ballet, there were instances that these democratic instances when you found the dancers moving through these uncomfortable moments and coming out the other end. What did you create in that room that allowed them to do that? What did it look like?
Communication, I think. I think so much, left in the dark, we can, and dancers can be overtaken by self-doubt and questions and feel like we're withholding information when I think you're at the front of the room, and or even if I call it the front of the room, if you're leading a space, the more information you can share, the better. So I think I've gotten into, and I've I've experienced the failure of that as well through process of not doing so and then creating attention, or there being attention that is created in the space. So I try to be open and honest and communicate every day, or as much as I can, as much as possible. If I feel like there's an uncertainty in the space, to kind of call it out. And because I think without uncertainty, we don't push further at all in anything we do. So letting people know that I too don't know, and I like to float in ambiguity, and I too don't know where we're going. But to trust me, or I would hope that people would trust the process, not me actually, but the process. And luckily, people seem to be open to these ways
Yeah, I was going to
of
ask if any of
working.
your dancers are slightly freaked out to start with, but they're open to it.
Oh, totally. And I'm freaked out too. And I think that's
Right.
it. I think
That's part
it's
of the
explaining,
ambiguity.
yeah, it's explaining that, and also like taking myself off of any kind of pedestal. And for principal dancers as well, for them to be able to work with younger dancers and see it also as a privilege, and to, as a teacher, and or, to share a space in a way through process, and realize that it's not a reflection of their talent or anything like that, which is hard because we're all very sensitive, and most of the extraordinary artists that I know are very sensitive, and it's okay to be uncomfortable. And as I said before, perfectionism is a killer, and I think that we have to accept being messy.
So how do you think that way of working makes your work better?
I think if you have an atmosphere that is delightful and
Hmm.
joyful
Hmm.
and joins people together, that you create beauty, period. I think you feel that. And of course, not every piece is going to be a success, but if you can create a space where 50 people are moving in the same direction, that is a rarity, and that is magic. That energy alone is just so, so, so powerful. To have people facing the same direction and like walking in a direction together, and just the act of building and creating together makes things better.
My understanding is that in your pieces, certainly in the San Francisco piece, Mere Mortals, that two of the hierarchies you did away with, or the demarcations, are the roles were not gender based,
Hmm.
and also there wasn't a distinction between the corps de ballet and leads. Is that right?
Yeah.
Could you talk about getting rid of those demarcations?
Yeah, I think it's been a long process for me, unfolding into that over the years, recognizing my own choices and my own place within the system and or taught systems. So it was a no-brainer. And I think for so much of my work now, of course, there's going to be certain pieces where you may want to have a group of female identifying people, featured in a piece, or
Especially in restagings, I imagine.
yeah, in
Right.
restagings. But now I find that so much of what we do is taken on other people's opinions of things or other people's choices. We just model ourselves after people before us. And so it's almost an unconscious choice sometimes. And I think being really intentional with who you're working with is really important to me. It's really, really important to allow dancers to make choices, one, and to not limit them. It was really amazing. And again, San Francisco was quite recent, so I refer to that. But even if I was perhaps working with one dancer who was male identifying, there were women that would just come to stand in the space and learn the material. And we would talk about it. This is not limited to how we identify in these spaces. And there it was such a new way of working for them. I think a lot of people are already doing that. And, I don't take much credit for any of that, but I think it's important that we continue to in ballet institutions for sure.
So I said I was going to ask you this question later, and now's the time, which is what has happened when you have worked in ballet companies that are very comfortable with existing structures, and have there ever been moments of tension or friction, and how do you work through those?
Yes, and it's not just ballet companies.
Oh, what is it? Tell me.
I mean, there's some modern dance companies that I also feel
Oh,
have old
really?
systems. Oh, yeah, for sure. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure. Whenever you've experienced in those companies, if you've ever experienced tension or friction between the way you'd prefer to work and the way they traditionally work.
Oh, yes. And, not every process is for everyone. So I'm not going to force someone to be in the studio a part of this process if it doesn't work for them. And again, that involves conversations with the director, and I'll generally have a conversation with a certain individual. And in the past, say if there is a dancer that doesn't feel that they're getting the particular role that they want or they feel they deserve, I'll talk to them and be very open with them about the process. And then if it continues to affect the dynamic in the room, then I have another conversation with them and then see where that needs to go. But again, if somebody, I would never want someone to be feel forced to be a part of a process that is just not working for them.
Since we're speaking of mere mortals in San Francisco, I was amazed to learn that it was the first full length ballet at San Francisco Ballet by a woman, by a
Can you believe
female
it?
choreographer, which is, and also it was kind of amazing and a little disappointing that one of the reasons why it happened is that finally there's a female artistic director there, but still it's 2024.
Yeah.
So since you've been working as a professional choreographer, have you seen noticeable changes in how women choreographers are regarded by the field? And
Hmm.
also, what do you think has yet to be done to achieve parity?
When I first heard the news, you're the first woman choreographing for San Francisco Ballet. Of course, there's a part of you that's like, yeah, yeah, fuck yeah. And then the other side of it is, wait a minute. I mean, this is absurd. This is
Yeah,
crazy.
it's crazy.
And so, yeah, it's not. I think there have been some intentional steps for sure to bring more women into leading positions, though I don't think that necessarily that that is the only answer. I think patriarchy can live in many different forms. So I am so happy and absolutely psyched that more women are being brought in and that there are more women being given opportunities. But we've got a long journey ahead of us because experience is knowledge. And yeah, it takes time to build.
You whispered it, so I'm going to ask you about it. You whispered
No,
patriarchy can live in many forms. So I'm going to ask you in the world of
no.
dance, how does it live in ways that a layperson might not immediately recognize?
Well, I don't know if this is going to answer the question directly because I don't know if it's just dance actually. But I think that a lot of people feel like if you're bringing a woman into an institution or to lead, that they naturally have certain values. And I think that power,
That they have values that'll conflict with what the company requires?
or that they too have been born into a certain system that they end up following the systems of the past, and so that they too can also, you know, I think patriarchy isn't just led by men, you know? So I think, and systems of hierarchy aren't just led by men. I think it's a human, it's a non-gendered thing. And so I think that's not just the obvious solution. I think it is dismantling kind of the systems a bit and working together and failing and trying again. And I have so much gratitude when it comes to institutions hiring me and trusting me to come in and create a certain work for their company. Oh gosh, I have so many feelings around this. I have like I was just going to start to say that, I think a lot of people bring choreographers in to create a work that will succeed. And I think that unto itself is also a very difficult predicament, because in order for art to grow, you need to be able to allow artists to fail. And I think in the system in this country, it is particularly difficult because we're trying to survive as a genre or as a language and a form of communication. And money is such a huge factor. And, I think bringing artists in that you appreciate and respect is one thing, and then expecting them to replicate something you've seen before and or something that will succeed so that they can sell tickets and raise more money for their companies and everything like that is another thing. And so I think it's working together to figure out. I don't have the answers, that's for sure, but I know what kind of environments I appreciate working in, and those are generally when artistic directors work together to create an environment that is satisfying for both. I think it is, let's take this risk together and you do you, so these are the certain parameters, if you know them up front, and what the goals are, I think it's better.
Mere Mortals, I believe, was a big success for San Francisco Ballet. It certainly made a big splash, and I think, which is any performing arts institution's dream, brought people to the art that hadn't known it before.
Hmm.
So, what do you think was the magic sauce that made that happen? Clearly, your work was great and you had great artistic collaborators. But is it spectacle that brings people in? How do you get audiences to become lifelong fans of the art form?
Oh gosh, I wish I knew the answer to that.
You don't?
I no,
That's too bad.
I think Tamara Rojo is a powerful, amazing woman. I'm really grateful for her trust in me and her belief in my work, and I mean, I feel it. I feel the support and also the push. I think that she has a lot of courage, and it has not been easy for her to go in there, and she has really been guiding and teaching and, implementing what she believes is that. And I think that's why it's important we have people like her and partners, I would say, like her, that are like-minded in some ways, not always, but in some ways. And I think she's done an amazing job at that. And I think an amazing job at realizing from the beginning that not everyone is going to love her.
Hmm.
And I think that that's where she and I align. It's taken me time to get there. But when I was younger, and the source of a lot of my anxiety was people pleasing and or thinking that certain people had the right opinions, or you had to fit inside of somebody else's likes. And over time, I realized that that's just not true. One, you have to have fun, and you have to just keep returning to to what you believe in. Of course, there are just tons of people that have amazing wisdom, but really to do what makes you feel good, because people will not like you, you know. She's really, really amazing. And I think her ideas, even she brought myself and Sam Shepard together. I didn't know his music before. Yeah. And she orchestrated that coming together. She's very smart, and he has a huge following, young, all ages, but a very specific following that she was curious about. And she likes the force behind my work and felt that us coming together was a good match, and our collaborators too. I brought my team and he brought his team, and luckily we all got along. It was not easy, and actually it was a test of the ego, of what should I hang on to and what can I let go of? What am I need to fight for in this moment? And what can I let go of? We also had some time, which was really nice. I had suggested to work in residency before, and Tamara made that happen. It's now something that she really feels is fruitful for choreographers to have some research time
Oh, I
before.
see. Because usually a choreographer would just be brought in to do the choreography, stage the work. But you
Oh
had
yeah,
you
that it
had
was
a
yes.
residency which was research and hanging out. Like,
Yeah, and that's why I have so generally I've kept I mean Aszure Barton and Artists, my crew, is that. So no matter what project I'm working on, I am working with my crew in some way. So I bring in a couple of collaborators as dancer collaborators, creative collaborators, and then the design team and the musician. Not all of them will be involved in every project that I do, but some of them will always be involved in projects that I do. And so they're like threads that keep coming back together. We go apart, come back together. And in the past, with ballet companies, the structures and time are so limited that, well, not the structure, actually, no, it depends on the company if they have, different budgets and things like that, varying budgets, I should say. But often you go in and you have very limited time, and they expect you to make something fabulous in a very short amount of time. And so, what I've learned over the years is, and I've done it for many, many, many years now, is to keep my process going outside of that. So that when I go into these institutions, I have a body of language and or work that is already and is a continuum, so that I don't get out of practice, and also that we can go deeper with people that we build relationships with.
I see. But generally, then you're doing that on your own time,
And yes, and
on your
then
own
boom, boom,
time,
boom.
right?
Exactly.
So
Deal and
what Tamara
done.
gave you was actually
2
room,
weeks. Yes, we
right?
had
I
I think we
see.
had a week or 2 weeks, I can't remember, of actually being in San Francisco. She brought the team there. We got to jam. We got to be in a space and there was no expectation, which is a
I'm amazed that
rarity.
doesn't. I think I always assumed, especially with new dance work, that always happened. But I'm clearly wrong.
No, it doesn't. It does not.
Because I
And
come from the theater
yeah.
world where, you always do workshops before you mount a play. And you had, yes, that's amazing. You got that. It should become par for the course, it seems, but it's expensive.
It should be, and so that's why I've created it on my
I
own.
see. Right.
Yeah, because it's absurd to think that someone can come in and build. I mean, sometimes you'll come in and make something okay, but to really make something meaningful, I think you want some time, particularly when it is people that we haven't worked together before and who are all very well versed in their forms, but you don't know how are we going to make this thing work? How are we going to interact?
Find a common language.
Yeah. What do
Right.
we like? Like, or
Uh-huh.
what do we not like? And how do we navigate opposition? And, not Sam and I definitely didn't agree on all things, but it's making space for each other. And, it was really lovely.
One thing that surprised me learning about you was I'd always assumed that someone who creates a company so young and has such a successful career is has her SHIT all together. But you've
Oh,
really
no.
you've been very honest speaking about that you've struggled in the past with crippling anxiety,
Yeah.
but have developed ways to manage it. At what point did you feel comfortable sharing that about yourself? And then also, we talked about perfectionism. In the world of dance, I'm sure you're not the only person who struggles with this. What could be changed so that artists and dance can feel more supported through that kind of mental health crisis?
Oh, gosh. Uh,
There's a lot of questions I threw at you.
no, it's okay. I am just, I'm at a point in my life that I am just so happy that I have, though I moved through much of it on my own through sheer will, and I probably could have asked for help more. I am just so happy that I don't have the level of anxiety that I have had in the past, and that I know how to navigate certain moments. That feels so good. And
Mm.
like I try to lead my days with that because it is debilitating and it is scary to move through the world in that way. And I think for myself, I realized that a bit of it came from narcissism, which was getting so wrapped up in my own mind that I wasn't able to see and listen and hear others. And so though I'm able to like come out of it or I'm sure it's something that is present for sure and something I'll have to recognize as I move forward always, but the level of it has changed so much. And to realize that I need and want to be able to have honest, genuine connection has really helped me. So there's another intimate little story. A few years ago during the pandemic, I had this wonderful dog named Tumo, and he was 17 years old. And when I was dealing or moving through a lot of anxiety, I leaned into him, and he had some troubles as well. And so we kind of helped each other. I traveled everywhere with this little guy. And during the pandemic, he was very old, but I recognized that I was a lot stronger and a lot more courage than I had recognized in the past. And I was able to hold him as he died. And this was something that I think I feared my entire life. I think that we hold on to things and structures and systems for safety and control. And again, it brings us back to that sense of power and being at least in control of something. And in that moment, I actually, everything shifted because I knew it was best for me to let go. And though it was the most difficult thing I've had to do, it was the most beautiful and the most transformative. And in that moment, my relationship to my work completely shifted. And the fact that I would isolate myself before, and because of being hurt in the past, these ideas around attachment and being loved, and when you're making work, it is already so vulnerable. So the relationships around you are a sense of security, but you need to, or one, I would say that one benefits from allowing people to go. So I realize in those moments of wait, the structures that I have created are actually helping me. And I get to have these amazing relationships that I get to move in and out of all of the time and practice that letting go. And that changed my relationship with anxiety. That changed so much. I get to have these like heart relationships with dancers, artists, collaborators. What better life than that, that I get to create with people that I really love. And I'm always practicing it because I think as a director, you have to have some kind of control. Otherwise, things are a mess.
Right.
But that dance between control and letting people be in control of their own lives is also something, let people be where they are, and then they'll show up if they want to, is something that I really am learning. I was going to say I've learned, but I am always in the practice of learning, and it's great because it frees you to have more fun.
Yes, fun is a good antidote to anxiety, always.
Oh, it is like the antidote, I think. And pleasure.
You can read a written version of this interview at uncsa.edu/artrestart. And if there's an artist or a topic you'd really like us to feature, won't you please let us know? I'm always happy to hear great ideas. You can find me on Instagram at PCTalenti. Our theme music is by Shanghai Restoration Project. I'm Piercarlo Talenti, and on behalf of the Keenan Institute for the Arts, thanks for listening.